if you're watching this now, you know that Xul has just been buffed. He is now a different hero, and he's pretty insane. Full disclosure, there is a bug with Xul right now that's being reported. I don't think that that necessarily is going to take away from how strong Xul is, unless they make some number changes. If any of that changes, check the link below. There's going to be a link to the build. But overall, I'm going to talk about why Xul, this is one of the best design changes I've seen in a long time for these weird PvE heroes to bring them to the PvP realm. They've done so much, and if you watched my Zagara video, you know that if you buff the PvE, you inherently buff the PvP, thus making the hero too good at PvE and too good at PvE, PvP, both of them, right? And so that's where Xul kind of is. If you buff his PvE at all, then you now create a crazy good hero. Right now, Xul is a crazy good hero. There's nothing that's really changed about the core aspect of Xul. Xul can still double soak. He's that good to where he can double soak. So because he has that type of lane presence, he's really good on maps like Towers of Doom, Infernal Shrines, where you can rotate, help invade, do different things. And that's a little bit more high end on terms of double soaking, but then rotating to invade. But Xul gives you a lot of opportunities. The thing that they did with Xul, they took a little bit away from his PvE by taking the skellies down so that it goes from 4 to 3, and they don't stay on as long, but they are higher health, which means that they do stay alive longer in a fight as a result. So I think they've done a lot because it loses health over time, and therefore it makes it so that they expire. But starting with a higher base health pool means that it's better for a team fight, which means that Xul now is actually insane. A couple things if you don't know what happened, because we need to get into this. Spectral Scythe. Whenever you hit a hero, it now spawns a Skeletal Warrior. It does not count towards the maximum that you can have. Therefore, you can hit 4 heroes and spawn 4. Now, I believe there's been some reports where that's not necessarily working, but I can neither confirm that or deny that. The other aspect, because this spawns a Skeletal Warrior, they now made it so that if I'm rooting somebody, if I'm CCing somebody, you hear me preach all the time about follow-up damage on CC. If I could spawn a Skeletal Warrior and one of them hit over here and one of them hit over here and Bone Prison hit here, like I might as well play Spider Build Nazebo, throw it onto a minion and watch it scatter. If I throw it onto a hero, yes, that will single target damage. These design elements now make Xul a much more effective team fighter. I absolutely love these changes. So now the old combo of pressing E onto somebody as they're going to get rooted, you can press Q so that Q hits them, and now that Skeletal Warrior can stay on top of them. Curse Strike still does a lot of the same old things. This is very good. It slows attack speed, and this is very good for wave clear, albeit hopefully you're hitting the middle minion so that you're getting the full cleave value for maximum efficiency. Let's talk about the talents on how to utilize all this, because Xul is insane now. So first and foremost, the best talent at level 1 for most purposes is Backlash. Back in the HGC days, point and click CC into 12% burst damage, and any team that knew how to follow up, which was very easy, this was used kind of as a weird cheesy strat. Backlash doing 12% max health to any hero is a lot of damage. It's a lot of damage to tank, so I have no problem standing in a fight as Xul. Bone armor, pretty healthy cooldown, well balanced. Backlash is really, really good. With Shackler, I do think there is some merit to this to get cooldown reduction on your bone armor by basic attacking heroes. This means more survivability. Because they buffed up Xul's health pool, I don't think this is necessarily needed, but I think that there is a weird niche spot for this, but I think it's against very specific compositions, and if you have like no tank and you need to be as tanky as possible, this isn't that bad. But then at the same time, how many times are you hitting a stunned, rooted, or slowed hero if you don't have a tank? I don't mind this, but I think Xul with the health buff and some of the talents later doesn't necessarily need the protection at this level so much as the damage. Now, Shade is a talent that if I'm going against a full auto attack team, this used to be a much longer cooldown. Now it only increases the cooldown by 10 seconds. I think Blizzard realized there's just not that many auto attack heroes that are that threatening. Therefore, Xul, he can evade all basic attacks. I mean, Kira would like to have a word with you on what evasion really looks like. But Shade, I think, is okay against a full auto attack team. If it's one auto attacker and a mage, I'm not really going this. It's not the hot. I'm not a big fan of this. As a result, if I'm going against the Zul'jin who's stacking out of his mind, maybe, but this is a level 1 pick. Backlash is really good. Burst damage, clicking onto a target, pressing E, pressing Q, and walking at them with Backlash is a crazy amount of damage. And if you have any follow-up, and it's really easy to see this because it takes a while for you to root somebody, then hopefully your team is helping to follow up on that. Any type of follow-up CC now becomes even better. Now, level 4 is kind of an interesting spot for me because right now the bug is based around the Skeletal Warriors. I did play a game earlier where that actually didn't happen, the double explosion, which is what's being reported. I don't know if there's certain conditions, but I did look for it. There was times that it did not happen. So I don't really know what's triggering it. However, because of the new changes, because the Skeletal Warrior has Corpse Explosion, it deals 50 damage, and this does scale. They're doing damage, plus they're doing explosion damage, and the benefit of all Skeletal Warriors now go to a fixed target. The only thing I've ever said in all my videos about CC is you want to send all of your damage at the CC target to eliminate one person. If you can eliminate one target in a fight, that fight is infinitely easier. So because of that, Bone Prison now gives you that point-and-click CC, and Jailers allows you to get those Skeletal Warriors. While fixating on an enemy, Skeletal Warriors gain 40% movement and attack speed, which means that maybe a Skeletal Warrior, you hit a Q onto somebody over here, but all of a sudden you've rooted somebody over here. Now they'll be able to sprint over and damage that target, or they'll be able to keep up onto a target while that is working. So there is different ways for Skeletal Warriors to stay on top of something that you're rooted and swarm around them. This is really easy to spawn to 80 Skeletal Warriors. It doesn't take long to complete. You can press E, plus this works on the ones you're getting in the minion wave. So there's a lot that goes on here. This means more targeted, focused burst damage by way of Skeletal Warriors that are going to explode onto the target. For a lot of you, I saw something earlier. We all know that auto attack Xul has been the hot for a long time whenever Xul comes in, because it's about getting the basic attack to reduce the cooldown, to get the attack speed, and to heal off of it. Fortunate for us, Xul actually had some talents moved around, which actually made auto attack Xul actually better. They lowered his auto attack, his base auto attack, from 110 to 100, which hurts. But if you go this talent at level 4, it increases it by 15%, thus making it stronger. And by way of that, you heal for damage on your level 7 if you go that build. I don't like this build unless there is 3 melee that I know I'll be hitting. 2 melee just doesn't feel worth it anymore. Going through, because you're hitting the premises, or the premise is to hit heroes to heal. And I don't think this is as valuable as what you can get from your damage. Your health pool is buffed up. You have different healing options now. You have different armor options, which we'll get to in just a moment. I think there is also merit for Reaper's Toll. Getting cooldown reduction on a 8 second ability brings this down to 6 seconds. If you end up going Echoes of Death at 13, which is very popular right now, this does have more Skelly Warriors that spawn, which means more uptime on different things. But for right now, Jailers is the better talent. I think down the road, Reaper's Toll, if they make some changes, some tweaks, getting Q build value is going to be there. If they nerf a lot, maybe auto attack build comes back, and therefore, if you're picking auto attack Xul, you probably should be picking a different hero. Okay, so Jailers really good. Reaper's Toll, I don't think it's terrible right now. Somebody might have even done the math, but I think getting the Skeletal Warriors, getting the movement speed to be able to swarm, to target somebody, to get the instant spawn of the 2 Skeletal Warriors onto somebody is so good, to get that guaranteed damage, to get that burst damage onto a target and make them run for their lives or take some serious damage. And if I'm coupling that, if I have Backlash available, which I don't always want to use it for this, but I could use it for this purpose, to walk up to that target, and if there's any follow-up CC, they take the explosion damage from Backlash, the explosion damage from the Warriors, and anything I'm putting at them. Oh, by the way, my level 10s are going to help there as well. So all of those are good. If you're going full auto attack, it's very simple. Auto at 4, auto at 7, auto at 13, and conceivably auto at 16, but this isn't necessarily a guarantee. If I'm doing this, I'm playing against 3 melee, which means one of those should be an assassin and weaken should be good. Therefore, that is not bad if I go that. But I'm currently not going that build because I find it inferior to the other builds that are going right now. And now that this is where it starts to materialize. I've got the burst damage at 1, that hasn't changed. I've got now jailers at level 4, which used to be a meme talent, but it's now pretty good. Now at level 7, Wall of Bones. Increase the shield amount of bone armor to 35% of Xul's maximum health, and you gain 20 spell armor for its duration. Keep in mind that Xul just had a massive health buff that I feel will be somewhat reverted. He went from baseline 2,000 to 2,200. This is one of the biggest health buffs you'll ever see in the game. So because of that, Wall of Bones now has an even more valuable portion to what it can do. So because of that, if I'm going against a lot of damage, if I'm trying to initiate a fight, Wall of Bones is very good against burst-style heroes, against Li Ming, against Kael'thas. If I want to walk in and get aggressive, Wall of Bones now gives me the opportunity to walk into a fight with a massive shield and 20 spell armor for a brief period of time. Because of that, Wall of Bones has an insane amount of value here. And I like this. However, I also like Trangle's Essence. Every time a Skeletal Warrior attacks an enemy, not hero, restore 0.5% of your max health and 0.2% of your maximum mana. If I'm going jailers and I am going to be going into Q at 13 and hitting my Q onto heroes means spawning Skeletal Warriors, I actually think this isn't bad in sustain compositions. If I'm going against a sustain team that I know that maybe they have a Lunara, maybe they have a couple of slow damage dealers, Trangle's now I think is a very viable talent because your Q is spawning. I actually really like that synergy. Moving into 13 makes it even better. So because that Xul can now be aggressive, he can poke with his Q, you can reposition so that you can actually guarantee those Skeletal Warriors spawning. And because of that, you're getting the damage in the team fight, you're getting the healing. I actually like both of these talents, but I like them for 2 different reasons. More against the heavy burst, I need to get into the thick of things and really create some chaos, which Xul really does that. Or Trangle's, if it's a more of a standoff position, this isn't bad on different maps. I think more open maps, Wall of Bones is going to be good. Hitting your Q on open maps like Hanamura, different things will be more difficult because people have the ability to move around in different ways. Trangle's, again, it's just hitting an enemy. I think just hitting anything on Infernal Shrines, just getting value out of this. Even if it doesn't focus a hero, it's still going to focus something, and I'm going to get healing, right? So I think a lot of this does come into play based on what map I'm on, potentially what the enemy composition is going to be. It's going to help me decide both of those. So for different reasons, I like them both. Wall of Bones, you can never go wrong with this because you're always going to get this giant shield to initiate in a fight, or at least survive in a fight. In particular, if I'm going against somebody that I know has point and click damage, Last Right's Malthael, Pyroblast Kael'thas, which for what it's worth, your level 7 talents, normally you can just sit on them until level 10 and see what the enemy team has. There's different things that you can do to survive different types of damage, and it all comes with your level 7 talents. I think sitting on talents is something people don't do, but this is one of the heroes that I think you could comfortably sit on your level 7 talent, not pick it, and then wait till level 10 and see what materializes. Now, we all know Poison Nova is always really cool and does damage. It actually does a lot of damage. But this can also be avoided. If I'm going against a fairly heavy melee team, I think Poison Nova is okay. But Skeletal Mages gives me something that is really hard to come by. This is 4 mages with vector targeting that slows enemies by 30%, and it creates this wall that it's hard to skill shot through, this wall that can slow people down. If I want to initiate a fight, I don't have mobility options as Xul to just run at them. It just doesn't exist. One of his biggest pitfalls is his lack of mobility. So one of the things that I can do is use Skeletal Mages. This is my preferred option. I can now initiate a fight, slowing an entire area with vector targeting. You kind of have to deal with these because they're actually going to do a little bit of damage. The slow is really annoying if you've ever played against this. Now, all those options, if I press E onto a target, they can't get away as much because my E, my Bone Prison, does take a while. After a 2-second delay, it will root, which means they have 2 seconds to walk away. If they're slowed by 30%, they don't walk as far. I can stay on top of people. Furthermore, I can get more value out of my abilities. I can land things easier. I can use my W onto multiple people now instead of just one target because they're all slowed and trapped. Skeletal Mages, I think, is the more efficient, more consistent option to initiate a fight, to take care of the weakness that you have as Xul, which is initiation. Because if I just kind of poison Nova, people will kind of scatter, and that's great, but it doesn't necessarily have the lasting impact that Skeletal Mages do. If you've ever played against Skeletal Mages, trying to walk through them feels like a huge burden. Trying to walk away from them just to get to safety, sure, but that takes you out of a fight. Poison Nova does do damage, and we did see a buff at level 20 for this. I think a lot of people get excited when they see that. But for what it's worth, I think Skeletal Mages is going to be better to vector target this, to initiate a fight, to get my team into a great position, to allow my team to follow up on all my CC, to allow my team to do a lot more. Skeletal Mages is going to allow my team to do that 630 damage that we might not be able to do otherwise. I think Skeletal Mages is the better pick. 13. Now, Amplify Damage used to be a level 16 talent. Now it's come down to level 13. That is really appealing. But with the changes to your scythes to spawn those skeletal warriors, Echoes of Death is actually really good. It's not necessary. They do damage. It's 60% of the damage. And I think that's cool. But spawning additional skeletal warriors that have corpse explosion, that do damage, that can fixate on a target, if I press Q and E, or if I press E then Q, and I walk up to a target, and those things all come back to me, and we're able to hit that, which also is easier with Skeletal Mages, I now have a skeletal warrior army that is killing a single target, or at least completely harassing an enemy team, also to help block shots and do other things, or to just absorb damage. So all of that looks really good. Echoes of Death used to kind of be a joke with the level 4 talent that used to be a quest. Now a lot's changed. Echoes of Death, with the new changes to your scythe, I think is so strong. It's very, very good. And so with that, Echoes of Death is the number one choice. Again, auto attack is only if you're going against 3 melee, else I don't like this talent anymore. Amplify Damage, I think in a different world where they don't put the Skeletal Warrior to spawn off of your scythe, Amplify Damage does become a priority target. This is still a very good talent. To increase the root duration of Bone Prison to a 2-second root, everybody and their brother can see that somebody's getting rooted. And when they get rooted, if you're a Li Ming, I'm sitting and waiting for my Xul to press E, because that is a guaranteed stationary target for 1.75 seconds normally, 2 seconds here, and they have 25 armor reduction. If you are a mage or a damage dealer with a skill shot and you can't follow up Bone Prison, that's really bad. Wait for your Xul because it's a point and click CC. Amplify Damage means that you're going to one-shot that target. If you're flinging somewhere else and Xul's rooting over here, you're doing it wrong from the backline. I think that's why Bone Armor isn't that great, or Bone Prison isn't that great as a result. And right now with the changes, scythes are better. So now you have 2 good choices. Actually, you have 3 good choices if you consider it. Bone Spear used to be the hot. This used to be a level 20. Then it got dropped down, and it's been really good. But now we got to consider the level 16 talents. I think Decrepify is insane. Enemy heroes that are damaged by Spectral Scythe or Skeletal Warriors, mind you, you're spawning a lot of them, are slowed by 40% for 2.5 seconds. This is oppressive. It is incredibly oppressive. This is awful to play against. And because you're putting all of these scythes out and the Skeletal Warriors are spawning, it's so hard not to get value out of this. This is an insanely good talent. And so with that, Decrepify can really help out in these moments to help your Skeletal Warriors stay on top of people. Remember, they're already fixating, they're already spawning, they're doing damage, and with Corpse Explosion, I want those Skeletal Warriors to stay on top of somebody. How do I get them to stay on top of somebody? Slow them by 40%. Make sure that they explode on top of them, because that's so good. That's so good. And so with all of that, Decrepify makes it really, really powerful with the new kit that Xul has to guarantee damage, to guarantee single target damage with your Bone Prison, and then also make sure the Skeletal Warriors are getting their corpse explosion value. Decrepify is really good. I say that like Weaken's not very good. Weaken is actually very good. Remember those melee teams I was telling you about? If you watched my Leoric video, you heard me talk about the value of the value of damage reduction, similar to Diablo's 16, Leoric's 13-16 combo. Weaken fits into that same category. Enemy heroes who are damaged by Cursed Strikes or Skeletal Warriors deal 40% less damage for 3 seconds. You're tired of letting the Deathwing through. I get it. But guess what? If I'm sitting here as a Xul and I can easily hit my Q, my Scythe onto a Deathwing, he's doing 40% less damage. This is all really good I can't slow him. Weaken now becomes pretty good. I do like this against a lot of, again, the heavy melee teams. If I'm going against double assassin, Weaken now looks really good. You come forward, I'm slowing already. I'm already slowing your attack speed. Reduce the attack speed by 40%, and now you're doing less damage. Hello, Illidan. Would you like to come in here? Because if so, I will weaken you and slow your attack speed. Weaken is really good, I think, against melee-heavy compositions that do a lot of damage. If I can keep my team alive by reducing 40% damage, that's better than me slowing them. For most compositions, Decrepify is really good. With the level 13 talent of Echoes, it's so hard not to proc this with your Skeletal Warriors hitting people, your Scythe hitting people, and Decrepify is really, really good. Bone Spear, not bad in the burst damage department. Again, I think that if you were going into an amplify damage build, then Bone Spear would be great. It's great follow-up on your own, but that does require your team to follow up. I would leave this to more coordinated teams. If you're playing with friends and you can communicate CC, amplify damage with a root from a Malfurion or a slide from an ETC into Bone Spear is actually like some serious damage. I would leave this to more coordinated environments and focus more on what you can do outside of that. Level 20, these are all good cooldowns or all good talents. Mortal Wound, if you're going Q build, is really good because one, I'm trying to kill a priority target. How can I do that? I can press E, make sure my first Scythe that goes out hits that target and reduces their healing by 75% for 4 seconds, meaning that I'm rooting them for almost 2 seconds, and I've reduced their healing for 4 seconds, meaning that that person that I am CCing can barely live or press their buttons and they don't receive any healing. That is really, really good. Cold Hand of Death also has an interesting aspect to it because this increases the slow of Frost Mages, which after I'm going 16 Decrepify, I'm not as worried about it because this does do a 30% slow, bumps up to 50%. Decrepify kind of takes care of that for me. Every 5th Spectral Scythe that hits enemy heroes spawns a Frost Mage instead of a Skeletal Warrior at their location. I think this will have value at some point, but I'm not a big fan of that. Mortal Wound is really good, but so is Kalen's Edict. This used to be a bit of a meme, but again, with the changes to your Q talent, each time Skeletal Warriors deal damage, reduce the cooldown of Bone Armor and Xul's heroic ability by 1.5%. If I'm spawning a bunch of Skeletal Warriors with my Q at 13, and I'm guaranteeing that I'm hitting more, those Skeletal Warriors come out, and I went Jailers. This makes your Bone Armor from 30 seconds, and it drops it drastically. The heroic ability is just kind of an added bonus, so this gives you more sustainability in a fight. I think all of these are good. I think Mortal Wound, for what it's worth, is probably the better talent for killing somebody. Kalen's Edict allows me to stay in a fight a long time. Cold Hand of Death, it's got a place. I'm just not a big fan of it. But I do like this talent a lot. I actually like both of these talents. If you went Poison Nova, Andariel's Visage, which is an interesting one because, whenever you get hit in Diablo 3, release a Poison Nova. For the Andariel people from old Diablo, you know that her 5,000 arms and her Poison Nova are real. Its duration is increased and you heal for 50% of the damage dealt, which is a pretty intriguing aspect. I think, again, This is against heavy melee compositions where you know that you're going to instantly hit them. This allows for your sustainability. Because it doesn't do more damage, I'm not a big fan of that, because if it is a heavy melee team, I'm probably already going W build, which means that I'm healing off of them already. Its duration is increased by 50%, but at this point, I'm trying to kill people sooner. I say it doesn't do more damage, but the duration is increased by 50%, so you can take it how you want it. It's just an interesting talent. I'm not a big fan of this because if I'm picking this, it's probably me already going auto attack build. And if I'm not going auto attack build, it's because of different composition. And I probably should be going Skeletal Mages because that's how we kill people and that's how we initiate fights. Mortal Wound and Edict are both very good talents for different reasons. I don't think you're going to find either one of them are inherently bad. Mortal Wound allows you to bone prison somebody, hit them with a Spectral Scythe, and make sure you kill that target. Kalen's Edict allows you to sustain in a fight longer, getting the bone armor potentially on a cooldown. For most purposes, I'm going to say Mortal Wound is better. Just getting that healing reduction, making sure that you're hitting people with that, I think is going to be better. So if you've made it to this video, you're wondering like, all right, he's talked about the bug, he's talked about that. I touched on it a little bit at the beginning. I don't think that unless they severely nerf the numbers, I still think that Xul's going to have a place. I think they want Xul to have a place. I think that Xul deserves a place. The scary part is he can double soak better than almost any hero in the game. Leoric can kind of keep up with him. Dahaka can kind of keep up. If you go auto attack at 4, Xul does it better, but I don't think your sole priority is to just soak an AFK. I played against a Xul earlier that did this the entire game, went full auto attack build, and my team had triple range. The guy had almost no damage, a ton of siege damage, but that's severely pulling back on what you could do as Xul. I think there's a lot of value into these different talents to allow Xul. He's now an excellent skirmisher, an excellent skirmisher that should be involved in fights, that should be in there getting his hands dirty, utilizing his bone armor. Backlash is insanely good. All the talents at 4, I think jailers right now, if they do nerf the skeletal warriors, this probably will still be pretty decent. Q build spawning skeletal warriors is good. If they completely gut the damage, then Xul will be out of the meta and this whole conversation will be for nothing. But if they can keep the numbers balanced, they fix the bugs, Xul's kit now allows for him to be a team fighter. 2200 base health at level 0, which I believe it's about 2280 at level 1. A lot of this means that he now is not super weak. He isn't reliant on auto attack build to keep him in a fight. There's different ways to use bone armor. There's different ways to do damage in a fight. It took away from some of his PvE, but his PvE was already so strong. So these design elements that they're doing with this hero are some of the best we've seen in a while for these minor reworks for a hero. To allow your Q to spawn a skeletal warrior, to take down the maximum number of skeletons, to raise their health, but also make them lose health faster so that they're not on the battlefield as much, means that it takes away the push value that you would get from AFK split pushing a Xul, but it brings the fight it allows you to bring the fight to people with the extra health, with the corpse explosion to allow this. So the changes for this, I think, are a very healthy change. Hopefully we'll see some changes towards things like Azmodan and Zagara going forward, although I think Azmodan's still pretty decent. Zagara still trying to find her way in. I think if they can keep these changes and translate them, this is the type of hero we're looking for when we look at a PvE hero, bridging that gap to be PvP, not breaking the PvE while simultaneously. Like if I'm very good at PvE and very good at team fighting, I'm going to get nerfed and I'm never going to be seen again. If I can do PvP really well and PvE average, that's fine. If I can do both slightly above average, which I think right now, other than the bug, Xul would be doing if he wasn't bugged out, would be above average team fight, above average PvE, thus making him very good. If you're wondering how does he fit in 1v1 scenarios on 2-lane maps, I still think that because jailers, it makes you able to poke and do damage a lot to heroes that don't like that. I don't necessarily like him a lot on Braxis at the moment. I think that he's actually okay. It does require some tweaking of builds if you want to go on a 2-lane map. Battlefield of Eternity, again, because he's bugged out, you can basically run him on any map. But as things get balanced and fixed, I think you're going to have to pull back the reins a little on maps that are 2-lane maps. Not all of them, but there is a place for them. And then also the aspect that you're going to come in on big maps like Cursed Hollow, that is primarily a 1v1. But because they put much more into the PvP, I think Xul has a place. And I have like, I don't even know if we've lost a game yet since we started playing Xul. The character's broken. He's first ban material right now. He'll continue to be first ban material, I think, even after the bug is fixed. They're going to have to tweak some numbers. But still, I think Xul is here to stay. And I hope you guys are playing Xul, testing out Xul, realizing how strong he is. The more we play it, the quicker it's going to get nerfed. But overall, Xul is badass right now. And if you're not picking Xul or you're not banning Xul, you should probably reconsider your hero pool and check it out. Don't forget, cleave value from your W, auto attack slow on specific heroes. Utilize those things effectively to be good. And I think you're going to find that Xul is a changed hero. Stop picking full auto attack build unless it's warranted, absolutely warranted. Stop just being a double soak AFK hero. Start team fighting and start smashing people. You're going to be like, hot dang, this hero is pretty good. That's Xul, man. He's back. He's back.